Recently, AMD had a really cool event where they spoke about their products and what's coming. And while this wasn't a CES type of event where they're showing the newest GPU, we've been talking about Big Navi a lot. So let's see what we learned at this event. So we are now officially in March and we're awaiting announcements from both AMD and Nvidia as to what the next generation GPUs are going to be. Of course, Big Navi has been in the rumor mills lately. There's a lot of misinformation out there. What could it be? What can't it be? And AMD recently had its financial analyst meeting. Pretty much they talked to their stockholders saying what they're going to do, their roadmaps for both their servers and their desktop CPUs and things of that nature. What was surprising was that along with their server and sort of professional businesses, their desktop processor and GPU as well as gaming made up a really large amount of AMD's revenue. So that's definitely good news for us because while they don't consider it necessarily a fast expanding market, they do consider it a very important and large market. And here we're talking about the Ryzen CPUs and like the AMD GPUs that we're really looking forward to, as well as whatever other gaming product they may have in the future. So basically AMD has a very optimistic lineup for this year. And now one thing that I noticed right off the bat, we were expecting GPUs to start coming out pretty soon, but I don't think that's going to be the case. Judging by their roadmap, it looks like we're going to get something likely in the third quarter or towards the end of the year. As you guys know, that's when Cyberpunk 2077 is coming out. I think it's around September unless they delay it anymore. So I figured that by then, by the holiday season, they definitely want to get a lot of GPUs out there, especially if they're performing this good, because they're going to really sell like hotcakes. Now, we're waiting to see what Nvidia does. They do have their GTC conference coming up as well. They may announce more than AMD did. I'm sure they're going to want to announce something at least just to sort of stay on the same page. Now, of course, the 3000 series Nvidia GPUs are going to be very, very exciting. And while we don't really know too much information as what's going to come out, we're going to see which company sort of acts first and releases their products first. Now, to talk a little bit more about AMD, Big Navi is sort of what we call it, but I don't think AMD really wants to use that word. They prefer to call it RDNA2 instead of Big Navi. Big Navi does seem a little bit more unofficial, so RDNA2 does sound pretty good. We can go with that as well. It sounds a little bit more scientific. Anyway, they're saying that there's going to be at least a 50% improvement in the performance per watt. Now, this doesn't mean that it's going to be 50% better than the last generation in terms of actual performance. These new power efficiency gains make a lot of sense as AMD continues to refine its 7 nanometer process. So we could see that GPUs like the 5700 XT, which were 7 nanometers, were really early in the process. And it makes sense as the years go on that the process is going to be refined more, allowing us to achieve better power as well as higher performance. We know Intel has been in their 14 nanometer for quite a number of years. The reason they don't go to 10 nanometer or 7 like AMD did is if they did, it doesn't automatically mean they're going to have better performance, because usually anytime they change that, it just means a few years of development in order to refine the process has to occur. So now the takeaway here is that AMD definitely is planning a competitor to the high-end Nvidia cards. As we know, they've been competing mostly on the lower to mid-tier range, topping out at the 5700 XT, which have also been plagued with some driver issues lately, even though AMD recently released some new driver updates that supposedly they fixed a lot of these problems. I do have a 5700 XT. I haven't tested out the new driver yet. I downloaded it, installed it. I plan to do a little test this week and see if the games are still stable. A lot of people were complaining about black screens and things of that nature. So definitely, no matter how fast or powerful or cheap AMD GPUs are, they really need to step up their driver support game, because it doesn't matter if people can buy the GPUs. If they sit down and play them and it gives them issues, they're going to eventually get rid of them and buy Nvidia GPUs. And believe it or not, recently a lot of this does seem to have happened with the 5700 and the 5700 XT. Now, they're definitely great values for the money, especially compared to other Nvidia cards in the same price range. But if the drivers aren't stable, people are not going going to keep them and get the Nvidia cards, which have shown to have more stable drivers. AMD also promised to be more aware of what's going around in communities and different forums. That way they can catch different issues a lot faster and be able to repair them. I mean, that's kind of what Nvidia does. Nvidia's usually on top of their game for the most part anytime they have a more significant driver issue. And it's not like AMD is necessarily new to the GPU game. I mean, they've had GPUs for years and years. It's just that I think Nvidia has a little bit more experience in the mass market just because they've been selling more GPUs the last few years, while AMD has had more concentrated and niche products. Now that AMD continues to plan to sort of build up their GPU portfolio in the mid-range as well as the high-end, they're going to have to really address these driver issues before the GPUs are released, or else they're just going to have people not switching over to the platform, and whatever technological improvements they may have per the dollar compared to Nvidia, going to be kind of a moot point because, like we said before, the GPU needs to be stable and function correctly with software, no matter what the hardware is, or else people just are not going to buy it. So I think most likely we can expect most of these GPUs to come out from Nvidia as well as AMD, probably I would say towards the latter half of the year. I really don't think we're going to get anything too soon, especially considering the recent worldwide events and the different supply chains, especially in Asian regions. So I think we're going to get these a little bit later on this year, but they definitely are coming. Now, the next thing to note here is that these new RDNA2 cards, aside from better performance, will support ray tracing, which is something that the current AMD cards lack, and of course Nvidia has. So far, it hasn't been too big of a deal because ray tracing technology really is in its infancy and it hasn't really progressed to the point where it's a must-have. I mean, a lot of games didn't really even have ray tracing support. Now we're definitely starting to see better ray tracing support with the 2.0 version. And I'm sure many games that come out in 2020 will support this even more, so it's definitely getting better. It just really wasn't that great maybe the first year or so that RTX 20 series were out and supported it, because not many games took advantage of it. And if you remember, some games that did take advantage of it, like Battlefield 5, had a tremendous performance penalty. Now, after a few months and even after a year, different driver updates and software optimizations have definitely made big improvements, while the games are looking better as well as just functioning a lot better. So hopefully this continues. So AMD coming into ray tracing may actually be positive, because if every GPU going forward is going to support ray tracing, or at least the high-end ones, I think more game developers will be incentivized to sort of have that in their games, and that way it's just going to get better and better as time goes on. So that's one of the good things about RDNA2. I think it's definitely forward-looking, and they're at least going to equal Nvidia. Who knows what Nvidia may bring in the 3000 series. Hopefully it's going to bring us a nice competitive environment like AMD did with Intel, in order to bring us better, faster products at a more reasonable price, and I think then consumers will win in general. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching. Remember to leave a comment below. Let me know if you're excited about these AMD GPUs. Remember to subscribe, smash that like button, and I'll see you guys on the next video.